Good afternoon and welcome back to Fight Sports Uncovered, and I'm your host Mark Joubert, and thanks so much for your time this afternoon. And we're here back in that place where just a few short weeks ago history was made.
Chyrene Strauss making history here tonight as the first female referee in the EFC and professional mixed martial arts in Africa. Fantastic to see and long overdue.
Yep, I'm joined today by the lady who was part of that history. In fact, she was central to that history being made right here at the EFC Performance Institute. And the lady that's joining me is now, we can call her professional MMA referee, Chyrene Strauss. Chyrene, thanks so much for your time, and wow, finally we can call you a professional MMA referee. How does it feel?
It feels amazing, actually. It's been a long, hard road, and I don't think it's really sunk in yet, no.
So, 3rd of July, 2021, EFC 87. Now that number 87 is of a bit of special. It's got a special place in your heart. I know. We'll talk about that now. But firstly, I got to ask, where were you? What were you doing? And most importantly, what were the emotions at the time that you finally found out that you were going to get locked in a cage with two professional fighters and officiate your very first MMA bout?
Well, I think I had heard on the Friday, like a little bird told me that it could possibly happen, and I was very emotional. I was very excited and actually got tears for a few seconds, but then put emotion aside and I was like, let's just see if it happens. And when we walked in on Saturday at EFC, they were like, this is happening. And it was kind of overwhelming in a way, but it was actually better because I didn't have time to get nervous or to worry about doing everything perfectly. It just happened.
EFC 87, like I said, that number is special to you. Why 87?
Because I was born in 1987.
So wow, so fate.
It's fate.
Absolutely, couldn't hold back.
No.
So the emotions were there, you got the opportunity. EFC 87 is when it finally took place, but I'm led to believe that it could have taken place at EFC 86.
Yeah.
Is that true?
That is true. There was a possibility it could happen at 86. Look, I've been pushing to do every single EFC, so I
think you've been pushing since it was EFC 50, wasn't it?
The idea was that the first bout we would try to do an all-female bout. Even the judges have them female, have the timekeeper female, but obviously we couldn't wait anymore because we're not at that level yet where everybody can be female. People were not able to travel anymore due to COVID, so they just decided that 87 was the one.
So let's go all the way back. 87 was the event. July 2021 was the date. You've been at this now since a long time ago.
8 years.
Okay, 8 years you've been pushing, doing your best to become the very best amateur referee, one of the very best amateur officials in the country. I mean, let's be honest. I know we've been talking about this a while. You were last on the show some 2 years ago. We were talking then, do we ever think this is going to happen? You were very reserved then. I think at a stage you almost threw your hands up like, I don't know if it's ever going to happen. I don't want to say you'd almost given up, but it was like, is it ever going to happen? You've been promised, you've been promised, you've been promised. It's now happened. Fantastic feeling. But I suppose it's a mixture of emotions for you because it's taken so long. We are so long down the road in terms of events here in Africa, in terms of transformation of the sport in the country. Just your thoughts and just bringing it all together. It's been a couple of weeks now since it's happened, and how's it now sort of festering in you that this has now finally taken place?
Yeah, now that it's finally taken place, I think the journey feels much shorter, but there was no road path. Like, I am the first, so I had to path the road, and I can only hope that moving forward, all the females that will follow will not have to path the road because it'll be path for them.
But you're going to be part of that journey. I mean, you've been invited to IMAF World Championships, not just once, but twice, 2018 and 2019. And I stress the word invited. It's not like you had to register and ask for permission to be there. You were asked to come and officiate as a female referee. You were actually, if I recall correctly, you were on the back page of the local press in Bahrain.
Yes.
As a result of your feat in being at the World Champs. But, and I must stress, we're in 2021 and it's the first time that any female on the African continent has stepped in to officiate an official professional MMA bout. You are that lady. The journey, the 8 years, I mean, you must have seen some fantastic amateur bouts. You've sat cage side, and as I say, we're sitting here in the EFC PI. You've sat cage side and witnessed some fantastic professional bouts. Judged those bouts. That experience, all of those little pieces that have come together, all have been part and parcel of a bigger puzzle that has now got you into this space where you are this person making history. Going forward, looking at the event itself, stepping into that cage under those lights, what was that like?
Look, it's a lot different to amateurs, being the fact that there's a production team and I had to worry, like, stand here, go through this door, don't. Amateurs is a lot more relaxed, so there was pressure to get those things right. But, yeah, what an amazing feeling. I think it's finally just, when you've done it for so long and that experience is there to back you, there's no time for nerves, and I didn't have time to build myself nervous, so, yeah, what an amazing feeling.
So, the feeling, that feeling on the night, I suppose it must have been a bit of a bittersweet feeling for you. Here in the PI, no fans, no friends, no family. They're not the normal kind of vibe that you would have wanted this debut to be, I would assume. But still, the debut as a professional referee, stepping out under those lights. That whole sort of process of going through, must do this, must do that, must check the fighter, must step out there, do your thing. Is it vastly different? I mean, you've been at World Champs, that's been televised as well. How vastly different was it for you from that experience to this experience?
I think the pressure was a lot more here because I knew that I had more criticism like watching me, and I knew that if I had not done my best ability or I had made a mistake or something, it would only have proved why it had taken so long for that moment to come. So I think the pressure was a lot more. In a sense, I think it's better that there was maybe not a crowd and not so many people because, to be honest, the support that I have received now, even it being a closed event, it's been amazing. Like, I'm so grateful for every single one that has had my back and walked me through the journey. But yeah, one can only hope that it's a growing evolution.
You talk about that pressure. A lot of pressure from outside, a lot of pressure from the MMA community. How much pressure did you put on yourself?
I think most of it's probably myself, but yeah, probably most of it myself.
I mean, referees make errors, just like fighters make errors that cost them a fight. Referees make errors. So, I mean, was it even harder for you to make sure that you kept your distance, that you stayed sort of far enough away, but yet close enough to the action?
Look, there's minor rule changes. Like, you're so used to doing amateur, and then all of a sudden, the dude's getting kneed in the face, or he's getting elbows, and you have to remind yourself, listen, they're allowed to elbows. Don't stop the fight right now. Don't do something stupid. I think that's what was running through my mind the most. Just remember the minor changes.
Let's talk more about the fight. I mean, like I said in the intro, it was a night of history. It wasn't just the fact that a female referee was stepping out to officiate the very first MMA bout on the African continent. There was another little piece of history in there, and just as we were building up to the show, you only realized that yourself. It happened to be a fight between two competitors that you've officiated many, many times as an amateur. So we're talking about Vince Bembe, okay? He was up against Given Majuba. Both of those guys you've officiated on many, many occasions, not only as a judge, but as a ref. How did it feel going through that progression of officiating with them, against them, over them, being the third person in the cage as an amateur, and now as a profession?
Look, I think having them actually made it a bit easier because it was a bit of a familiar face or a bit of a familiar situation. But yeah, to see how they've grown to pro and for me to be standing at that same level with them, finally, that's really an amazing feeling. That's really what made it all worth it.
And the other piece of history, the very first Von Flue choke in EFC history, and it was you on your debut in that fight. Wow.
Well, it was a short fight, so at least now everybody has something else to talk about because it wasn't the distance. So yeah, that's something, eh?
The 1 minute 12 seconds, can we talk a little bit about that? Yeah, I'm sure you would have liked it to go the full 15 minutes, get a lot more, let's call it cage time for yourself as a ref. But the 1 minute 12 seconds, I mean, it's still 1 minute 12 seconds, you've made history. What was it? I mean, it must have lasted for an hour.
Yeah, it actually did feel a lot longer than 1 minute 20 seconds, but in the same breath, it felt so quick. It felt like it was done in short time. So, but it was good.
Looking back on the performance, you're a very self-critical person, knowing you from all these years that I've known you. You look back at the performance, you look back on that night. Is there anything you think about and you go, only 1 minute 12 seconds, but I could have done that better, or I should have rather done that, or I should have. What are some of those things that you've already sort of self-analyzed?
Well, I think the movement, because obviously this cage is a lot bigger. We're used to these cages at IMAF, but I mean, with COVID, we haven't been reffing much. We did nationals at the beginning of the year, and that's basically it. So I think the first thing when I watched it back, I was like, the space, there's so much space, use your space, don't be so concerned. But other than that, I think it went really well. I mean, I think I'm at the point where my work speaks for itself. I don't have to worry about, am I doing it properly? I think it's more just about evolving and growing and becoming better in every single one of the fights.
What was the support like from your fellow referees, bearing in mind that all of them are almost household names when it comes to MMA in this country and on the African continent? What was some of that support like?
Well, Brad wasn't here, and Vickers has been amazing all the way through. Like Vickers and Bobby was helping me. So I think overall, I had really good support from the other male ref.
Well, there you have it. I mean, it's been such a fascinating journey for Chyrene Strauss over all of these years, watching her at amateur events, watching her develop, seeing her being exposed to the very best amateur competition in world champs, and now suddenly to see her under the bright lights in a professional bout. This conversation is probably going to go on for a very, very long time, but right now we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to discuss a little bit more about the transformation issues and what more needs to be done to get more females under those bright lights in those cages and just expand this combat sports and women in combat sports. Don't go away.
Here we go! Recent research that is on the net in guns and Dominic, no touch. Oh, Holly Holm. Oh, look at the ring! The big dog! Spear! Boom, down the top!
Welcome back to Fight Sports Uncovered. I'm your host, Mark Chubert, and if you missed the first part of the show, we're here at the EFC Performance Institute, where only a few weeks ago, history was made with a professional refereeing debut. Yes, Chyrene Strauss became the very first female referee to step under the bright lights of a professional MMA bout on the African continent, making history, and not just in her capacity as the first female referee, but officiating over the very first Von Flue choke in the EFC. So lots of history made on that night, 3rd of July 2021. And I've got to say that again. It's July 2021, and we're talking about this transformational issue for the very first time in MMA on the African continent. Bizarre as it seems, it is a fact. Chyrene, coming back to the transformational issues, transformation has been something very, very slow to take place across combat sports in this country. I mean, boxing has done a lot in terms of empowering female officials and female referees. Not many of the other sports have done it at the rate that I think that female fighters, female officials would like it to take place. MMA has now caught up. But let's talk about that transformation. For the longest time, you've been fighting the good fight for women in the sport. You've now on the Women's Commission within MMA in South Africa, and recently become the head of the Women's Commission. I've got to ask, did that whole appointment maybe not fast track the history that was made on the 3rd of July?
I think that appointment just showed my commitment from our side and started to show the reward of the hard work that had been already done. So I don't think that was the reason, but I do think that people then realized she's serious and she's not going anywhere and she's going to keep on fighting for this. So, you know, hard work eventually, it shows for itself, and I think that my work surely has spoken for itself.
Are you looking forward to get back into, I mean, it's a silly question, but professional bout, or you want to go back and do a little bit more amateur stuff as well?
No, I would do both. I'll take any bout, anytime.
As a professional ref, you mentioned it at the beginning. Has it really not sunk in yet?
I don't know. I don't think that it can sink in, because I think every fight would probably feel the same, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know how it's supposed to feel if it sinks in. It just is.
But I suppose it's like being a champ. You only really a champ when you have to defend the belt for the first time. Maybe the next fight, maybe the next bout that you step under the bright lights, that'll suddenly go, oh, I'm here. Wasn't bad the last time. They asked me to come back.
Hopefully eventually I get to the feeling where I'm like, oh, I'm still here, I'm still okay. I don't think that there's a line. I don't think that there's a feeling exactly that I need to achieve, because I want to be in the sport for a while. I want to take it all the way. And I'm here to do, this is what I love. This is what I'm passionate about, and I'm not going to stop.
I suppose now from a refereeing point of view, you've started out, was the second fight of the night. It was a very short fight, as we've spoken about. But I suppose for you, in terms of your progression now, it's to move out of that undercard, okay, out of the prelims, into a main card, because as we know here in the EFC, prelims aren't televised. So your family had to watch you streaming, etc., etc. But your next step, I'm assuming, is that main card onto TV, and hopefully soon a main event where we have females battling it out, some other ladies battling it out for the title.
I think that I'm not going to put too much pressure on myself in the sense that putting a timeline on it, because it's been a really hard road to here. I think from here to main card will probably be just as much as hard road, but I think every fight's important, and I think every fight I can only prove myself more and more and more, and pave the way more and more and more for other females to follow.
As a mom, here's the tough one. As a mom, what were your kids feeling? What was the feedback from the kids?
Look, I can honestly say, my kids have been like my #1 fan from the beginning. They've been sitting cage side at amateur events sometimes, and they were more excited than me. So at the end of the day, I must be honest, my kids have been my biggest fans and my biggest inspiration. So yeah, I think they love it.
And in terms of informing them, I mean, obviously, as you mentioned before, you only really found out the Saturday that you arrived here. Did you put in a phone call to say, guys, get onto the stream, I am going to be in the cage?
Yeah, luckily they were at home, and I phoned, I said, it's happening, this is real. What fight? Fight number 2, okay. When I got home, they were all excited and wanted to know all about it, and they were like, we watched you on the stream. So yeah, it was very, 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 very special.
And friends and family also?
Yeah, my dad phoned, everyone had phoned. So like I say, the support I've received from the public, from fellow fighters, other people in the sport, it was really, really, really overwhelming.
So truly special moments.
Very special.
Let's get back to the transformation question. So as the head of the female commission, or the women's commission within MMA in South Africa, obviously now it falls on your shoulders to now take what you've now experienced, what you've fought so long for, and take it to the next level. What are some of those challenges that you're seeing, you've experienced, we've spoken about them before, but what are some of those challenges that you have now taken on to try and rectify? Because I'm sure when it comes to putting timelines to that, you want to get that fast-tracked and you want to put some serious timelines to make sure that others don't take as long as you have.
Yeah, I think, like I say, we're paving the road. For women, it's a little bit more challenging. You have to come in with the thick skin and you have to leave with the thick skin. And if there are challenges, you have to just find ways to face it without being, how can I say, enforceful. There's a lot of room to still grow for women in the sport. There's a lot of things that still have to change. Our structure's changed. We have new people in different positions. And I think that a lot has already changed the right way. And I think we still have a lot of changes to make. But I will be here every step of the way for every woman in the sport and be pushing and supporting as much as I can.
I got to ask, you made a comment there about women have to come in with a thick skin. It's 2021. Why are we still talking about women having to have a thick skin? I mean, the sport is the sport. It is equally available to both men and women to walk into a gym, to train. Yes, there may not be as deep a roster of female fighters, both in amateur or in the professional ranks, but why must women come into this game and have a thicker skin than men?
Look, I think it's a matter of women are a little bit more emotional, and you can't have emotion. You need to decide to leave your emotion at home. And it's harder for women in the sense that, yes, we're in 2021, but it hasn't been done that much yet. It's a new sport, it's a new challenge for anyone. And yes, I've already done it, but even new referees coming in, they have to really want this. You have to put in the hard work. You can't just think that you're going to come in and walk your way through.
Is there still the feeling that MMA is a man's domain? Understand, fully understand, but we see it, okay? And I suppose the fact that you're not prepared to answer it says so much in itself. It's a pity that it's still that way.
I think internationally is a little bit different because like at IMAF events and stuff, we have a lot more female fighters, we have a lot more other females that are involved, even though it's not refereeing, but I mean there's judges, there's timekeepers. And in the sense, in South Africa, we don't have that many. Look, we've grown a lot in the last 2 years, but we don't have that many females involved. So it's harder, it's kind of like a minority fighting a majority, but it can be done, but we're not at the position where it's like an equal split yet, but hopefully we'll get there. We keep growing and hope for the best.
So you have a serious task on your hands as the head of the Women's Commission. Looking at some of the other challenges that you know, being part of the Women's Commission is not just about the officials, it's not just about referees, it's also about the athletes themselves and some of the challenges that they face, which are vastly different to the challenges that men face. Some of those being a lot of the lady fighters have got to fight against men, okay, because there's not enough other sparring partners for them to be able to train at, particularly when you look at the lighter weight divisions. There are not many females fighting at those lighter weight divisions, so a lot of their sparring takes place against men or against other women at heavier weight divisions. And then what I've seen in a lot of events, it's like you've mentioned, there seems to be the same officials, the same people over and over again, and not enough new blood coming in, getting excited about the sport. Is that the difference between bringing in that new blood, the passion for the sport as you've had for so many years, or is there just not enough programs out there to bring more women into the sport?
Look, I think it's more challenging for a female to walk into an MMA gym and say, I want to be a fighter, or I want to train, I think it is daunting for females. But in the same sense, I think it's also a lot to do with COVID. Like the fact that we haven't been able to do all the things we want to do and all the events we want to do, it's hinged the process a little bit. So I think it's not really just to say it's the sport or it's because it's only men or whatever. I think it's also because of the pandemic we're living in.
How has that pandemic affected your journey up to this point? Because the last year and a half has been, I mean, it's been staggering in terms of the impact it's had on gyms, on fighters, on amateur athletes. I mean, just look at the number of professional athletes that are now available to the EFC. That's almost disintegrated. What has the pandemic been like for you over the last?
Especially like the last 3 years, my life was, if not every weekend, every second weekend, we were MMA. We were at an event, we were doing nationals, we were doing this. And to not have MMA in my life, it's been crazy in a way. Like you watch UFC and you're like wishing EFC would be on the next weekend. So it's been very challenging for me to not be in the sport, and I think coming back made me love it even more. But I think a lot of fighters have been lost to it, and the fact that they couldn't train, they couldn't fight, compete, get money. So yeah, it's very sad. It's actually very sad what's happened to the sport.
Looking at your journey, if you could, and if you had any advice for your younger self or any young female referees, young female athletes out there, young female officials that want to, first of all, get into the sport or take it to the next level, what would that advice be?
Be patient.
Clearly.
I think that you need to understand that hard work does pay off. And if you talk the talk, you have to walk the walk. You can't just talk the talk and not walk the walk and put in the hours. I mean, there's been events where I've been the only referee all 12 fights, or there's been events where I have to ref super heavyweight fighters because there's a challenge going on about it. But at the end of the day, there is no reason why you cannot achieve what you want to achieve. If the dream is there and you put in the hard work, it will definitely happen.
Well, you can't get much better advice than that coming from the lady that's actually created history. Chyrene Strauss, she's just, I mean, if you needed any sort of amp or any sort of push, you've just heard it from the lady that's made history. So for all of you young, aspiring fighters, officials, referees, if you want to get into the sport, into any of the combat sports, here's proof that it can happen, it will happen. Maybe just a little bit of patience and it will eventually happen for you. Hope you enjoyed the show. To Chyrene, thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
The very first professional MMA referee on the African continent. So great having you here.
Thank you so much.
For all of you out there, protect yourselves at all times, and we'll see you next week. We're out.